today I'm going to present you an empirical research that I've been conducting with an open science project called BigScience. And so what I'm going to show you is how I argue that ethical frameworks, such as ethical charters, can be a moral exercise in the field of natural language processing when we're talking about AI. So very briefly, to give you some ground knowledge, for me, when I talk about artificial intelligence, I'm really talking about a broad scientific domain that, of course, includes machine learning engineers, computer scientists, mathematicians, statisticians, and lots of other people from the hard science, as we say in French. But it could really need a hand from the social sciences too. And that's also why it's so interesting to talk about interdisciplinarity when we talk about artificial intelligence. Because since we have common goals, it's really interesting to see how social scientists such as anthropologists, sociologists, philosophers can really work together with the hard science. So we're going to focus today on natural language processing and large language models. So it's a branch of AI, especially concerning what we can call human-machine interaction. It's what is behind chat, like technologies such as chatbots or virtual assistants, or what we're going to focus today, large language models, such as maybe you're familiar with GPT-3, who has been we have been talking about it for a long time now, or smaller models such as BERT. So we're talking about language models. So they are kind of the foundation of technologies built around the natural language processing. So within this context, the research questions that I'm going to ask and trying to answer today are: how can ethics, so from a philosophical point of view, can serve as a tool for collaboration when we do interdisciplinary AI research, and which normative ethics is best suited to an interdisciplinary and multicultural environment, and finally, how to ethically frame a large language model. So the case study we're going to analyze today is how to draft an ethical charter for an open science project such as BigScience, that I'm going to explain to you very briefly in a few minutes, and who's trying to develop a large language model in an open science basis. So this is just an image that shows some of the capabilities of a large language model. So this is the field of AI that I'm working in. And this is actually really one of the the beginning of the development or our large language model. So it's called T0. You have the reference just here, and it kind of shows how and what are the capabilities of such large language models. So we have something like summarization. And so here's the question, and then you can have the answer just there. We can do sentiment analysis, and this is really used, especially when it's applied to social networks, for example, to see if something is more or less positive or negative. You can also have question answering, since it can also generate answers. And the natural language inference, that it's something that is mostly about the zero-shot generalization, but I'm not going to discuss the technical details. It's just kind of a snapshot to show you what can be the capabilities of such a large language model. So the case study, coming back to more abstract concepts, so it's called BigScience. And so if we come to the etymology of BigScience, or what's the historical origin of this name, it designates extensive scientific collaborations with a large group of scientists instead of a small team. So it's opposed to small science. So one really famous example is what the CERN did with the Large Hadron Collider, because they kept together over 2,000 researchers working on the same machine. So it's big science usually need big constructions. So those large collaboration, they inspired the open science project BigScience, because of course, in order to train such a large language model, we also need big constructions. And we're actually in the training phase in the supercomputer that we have here in Paris, offered by the CNRS, who's called Jean Zay. So what is BigScience about? It's over 900 researchers from 60 countries that speak in more than 25 languages and dialects, creating a very large language model and a very large multilingual text dataset. So this is the context we're talking about. So you can already imagine the ethical challenges around that. So when we also talk about interdisciplinarity, is because given all those researchers coming from all different countries and speak all different languages, all the participants are investigating the dataset, so who's been used to train the model, and also the model from all different angles. So, for example, we have people investigating bias in the model, or so what is its social impact, its capabilities, so it's from more a technical point of view, also its limitations, of course. Then we have the ethics part. What can be their potential improvements, what's the specific domain performances, and of course, super important for us, it's also its carbon impact. And last but not least, the cognitive research landscape. So for coordination and of course organization, in order to achieve these goals that are still we're still working on them, the project was organized around working groups, so that's mostly for the organizational part, and with researchers that of course come from different but complementary disciplines. So for example, talking about capabilities or limitations, we since it can be or seen as mostly a technical goal or a technical subject, it's also been studied from the social science part of it. So we also have sociologists and historians working on the dataset, for example, helping us on achieving on those goals. So I've been saying that it's multilingual. So this is actually the dataset that we've been using. So as you can see, we really try to be as broad as possible and trying to cover as many languages as possible. And so we can have like Arabic, the Basque language, Catalan. We have 70.7% of Chinese. We also have training on code, so for code generation, for example. We have a huge part also that it's in English. Then we have French, Indonesian, Niger, Congo, Portuguese, Spanish, and Vietnamese. So this is kind of give you a snapshot of what are the languages that the model is going to speak tomorrow once it's going to be trained. Okay, so now that we have the technical part and we've seen what's BigScience and what is it about, so we can concentrate on the ethical part. So what we decide is that, of course, we are well aware of the social impact that such huge technologies can have on society. So since we know that it can be both positive or negative, we decided to adopt an ethical charter. So the main goal was to try to govern all different aspects of the development of all BigScience artifacts that for now, so we only have the dataset and the model, but maybe tomorrow we'll be developing some tools for navigating and working on those technologies. So laying on its established values, the main scope of the ethical charter is to serve as a pivot and for developing other documents governing more specific ethically and legally sensitive aspects. So for example, we discussed this and we thought that since the ethical charter couldn't, of course, talk about maybe use restrictions or data governance or the model license or something that it's more aimed to govern maybe the kind of conduct of the collaborators and et cetera, since it's super broad. we thought that we could use the ethical charter to serve as a pivot to developing the other documents so in order to govern other specific aspects. So we use the ethical charter to state ground-based values, and upon those values we can build and develop and draft other documents. So other additional goals that are as important is to let all collaborators of the project to commit to BigScience core values, of course, and it is both individually and collectively, in order to also have some part of responsibility, and also to promote those values within the research community, since we see ethics as a habit from its also Greek tradition. And so that was the main goals, and there are the threefold scopes of the ethical charter. So those are just a few examples of the core values that we chose, and all the discussions that, of course, we had around it. It took us around 3-4 months to finish the latest version of the ethical charter, but I just chose these 3 examples because unfortunately we don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to show you how some values such as inclusivity maybe can have different definitions coming from different parts of the world or different disciplines too. And for example, if I take inclusivity, we work to ensure welcomeness in the process and equal access to BigScience artifacts without any form of discrimination. So religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, etc. This is pretty common, maybe. But we also wanted to add, and we have few discussions around it, that we believe that the value inclusivity is not just about non-discrimination, but it can also be identified as a sense of belonging. And it was really important for us, especially talking about maybe minorities, and not when I talk about minorities is not just from an ethnic point of view, but it was also it can be minority, maybe like as being a philosopher, I'm a minority on those kind of projects. So it was really important for us not only to talk about in non-discrimination or be against something, but we also wanted to promote something in a positive way. And that's our interpretation of inclusivity. We also have something that it's usually pretty technical, reproducibility. So it doesn't really come from the moral philosophy tradition. So I kind of struggled with this value because I didn't really know what they meant. And especially knowing that developing a large language model can, as I said, it really needs big constructions and super calculators. So when we talk about reproducibility, what are we talking about? Because not all people and not like common citizens can afford to train such large language models. So we came to the trade-off of writing that the BigScience project was born with the clear intention of being a research initiative devoted to open science, and it was super important for us to just state that. And that it aims at ensuring the reproduction of the research experiments and scientific conclusions that are developed under its aegis. So that was what we meant about reproducibility. And last but not least, of course, we have also other values and other distinctions between values. But we also have openness, which is different from reproducibility, because for us, it really takes 2 dimensions. We have one that it's really focused on the process, and the other that it's really focused on its result. So since BigScience, it's an open science framework developing NLP technologies. And we really wanted all the research community to be free and to be maybe to ask for help and to see if the research community would be interested to collaborate, because the more we are, the better maybe the project can be, and science can just go further thanks to that. And so we really wanted people to be free and to join the initiative at any time. And with regards to the results of our research, such as the future of large language model, these are created by the research community to the research community, and therefore will be released on an open basis, taking into account the risk derived from the use of the model. So this is really a huge statement, since all large language models that we know so far that are really huge, such as I said, GPT-3, we have Lambda from Google, and Google just released a couple of days ago a really even bigger large language model that has, I think, 560 billion of parameters. But those large language models are all closed. So we really wanted to state some ground rules, ground values, stating that we're open science and we will always be. And it's kind of a first experiment that we're having on an open science basis in the world. So coming from my perspective, what were the challenges that I faced? Some are the fews, and of course, bringing together all kinds of different scientific disciplines to discuss ethics was maybe the first challenge, because as of course you know, AI ethics is now really fashionable. And not all people consider ethics as being some like a branch of philosophy, because of course there's also lots of collaboration coming from other disciplines. But it was really important, at least writing an ethical charter, that it could also be used and enforceable in other ways. That we really wanted to ensure that we were talking about philosophy. So it wasn't super easy, because of course, coming from different cultures too and different disciplines, it was kind of challenging bringing them to the philosophy ground. And then, of course, explaining the basics of moral philosophy in a simple and practical way, it could be also super challenging, especially maybe if you have experience with that, talking to engineers or computer scientists that are really mathematical. And it could be really challenging trying to get them just to talk about concepts and to talk about something that could be more theoretically and not just super pragmatical. So it was super challenging, that too. And that's the third point. It was kind of one of my missions to use ethics as a glue, that it's capable of building bridges between different scientific disciplines, because we all have this ethical sensibility, I would say, or this kind of awareness that, of course, what are we building? It could be dangerous, but it could also be, so it can have, as I said before, positive and negative impacts. So it was really important to use some ground rules and some ground disciplines to trying to build bridges among all other disciplines that could be interesting, and of course having the same goals. So that was also challenging, and moderating and welcoming all different views on the hierarchy of values to be adopted, because of course, as I said, having lots of people coming and having lots of different value systems among them, it could be also really challenging to try to moderate the discussion and see what could be the trade-offs, where we could go to have some formal consensus. And that takes me to the fifth point. So to find consensus among various definitions of the values chosen, given the cultural and demographic differences. And last but not least, adopting an ethical approach that allows for the coexistence of divergent value systems, but with the same goals. So that was also quite challenging, trying to find something that could work with all these elements in the box, I would say. So I came with so during my research, I really explored what the more Eastern moral philosophy tradition was doing about that. And we have just put this quote from our ethical charter that I really enjoy. And it says that we assume the basis of value pluralism within our community and we cherish it, because I really wanted to, instead of being just a challenge, just some difficulty, I really wanted to be an asset and say that since we were coming from different disciplines, different value systems, different demographics, it was really an asset being able to just discuss what we wanted to do with this large language model. We wanted to be what we want to be for society. And we thought that value pluralism could support this idea. And when I talk about value pluralism, it's the idea that there could be conflicting and competing sets of values. But because it recognized the existence of many different values, ethics, and norms, value pluralism is agnostic about value definitions. So that was really something that I found useful in this, given the context that I had, and also coming hand to end, the Confucian notion of harmony, and allow us to consider all the shared values equally with their tensions and similarities. I'm not going to explain to this crowd, of course, what's the notion, Confucian notion of harmony, but given the more Western approach where we only kind of stuck with consequentialism, deontologism, and ethics virtue, I really thought that it could be useful for this kind of population that I was addressing to find something that could embrace not only differences, but also possible conflicts. Because, of course, what I really thought it was useful to mobilize this notion of harmony, its capacity of not only not trying to avoid conflict, but trying to embrace it in order to just solve and try to see what could be the trade-offs, and just in order to follow the common goals that we could have and share. So being by its very natural relation.
We have 3 minutes left. Yeah.
3 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for notifying me. Okay. So enough about harmony. And we just wanted to show you why we're talking about moral exercise. Since for the Latins, morals are customs, and in the Greek philosophical tradition, we consider ethics as a habit. So I really consider that the exercise of being around a round table and sit and really share what were our common values, that really described what are our beliefs and what were essential, what were the values that were really felt essential for us, because the researchers expressed, discussed, and negotiated their beliefs about morality. So I really found that it was kind of a historical moment to frame and to see what could be, as I said, the trade-offs, but also that what could be the thing that we shared. So it was really an important moral exercise. And just to conclude really quickly, that there's still a lot of talk about ethics in AI from perspective that does something sometimes that don't even belong to ethics, but too little about philosophies. Because when we ask ourselves what makes an AI model a good model, or what might be right to develop and what might be wrong, we're doing philosophy. So what I just wanted to finish and to say is that artificial intelligence is a scientific domain that really demands meaning, guidance, and responsible use and development of its systems. So awareness of this issue is increasing, as I said, also coming from more technical aspects, the really awareness that it's increasing. And the new generation of scientists, engineers, and computer scientists are really aware of the risks. So only through interdisciplinary research and assisted by ethics, it can really answer the fundamental question that the scientific community is asking. So it's really important to use ethics as I said, this kind of glue that really tries to build bridges among all other different disciplines. Thank you.